All right, good evening, everyone. Dr. Stacy here. Welcome to our Tuesday night Zoom extra special edition tonight. Thank you for being patient, waiting until 8:30 in the waiting room. And for those of you that aren't able to get in, if you have team members, they can go to the YouTube, check the link in the chat. We have the link. YouTube is live right now for the people that aren't able to get in. But we have an extra special Tuesday night for you this week. I am so grateful, so blessed, and just so honored that our inventor, our founder, our owner, our CEO, David Schmidt, is here with us tonight to be able to share some incredible information with you all about the X20 water machine. And I know that for those of you that have that machine, you're in love with it. I would love for you to drop your personal experiences in the chat. If you have any success already that you want to share, please drop that in there. We would love to, hear and congratulate your successes from drinking the X20 water in the past few weeks, maybe if you got your machine, or in the past several months, like some of us. So I'm going to turn it over to David because he has a presentation he wants to share, and then we'll do some Q&A at the end. But if you have questions is in regards to like mechanics, things that you're curious about, please know there are a lot of questions answered in the company LifeWave back office resources tab in the FAQ section, the X20 toolkit. We will drop those PDFs in the chat as well too, so you can take a look at those, but you can get them from your back office. We won't be going over those mechanical logistics that have already been answered. David has a lot of other amazing information, and we have incredible questions from our field as well too. So David, I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Stacy. And good evening, everyone. It's great to be with all of you here. Great to have this time. So about 2 years ago or so, when I started sharing information about this technology, I talked about the development of it. So the objective was to look at species that don't age. We're studying planaria, hydractinia. These are species that are biologically immortal. And I wanted to understand what the biophysics was behind this. Were these organisms using light to signal the body in some way that was defeating aging? And one of the species we were working with was lobsters, and I began a study. And what I found was that there was this biological code that the lobsters were using to defeat what we would consider to be normal aging. So while lobsters are not biologically immortal, they don't age the way that human beings do. They functionally stay young as long as they live. And of course, they either get sick and they die, they get eaten by a predator like human beings, or they simply grow so big that they can't produce a shell large enough. But the lobsters themselves, the tissue never age. So there's a biological code involved with this. And then it was only a few months after I made that discovery that I was doing a Bible study, and I found the same mathematical code in the first sentence of the book of Genesis. And so I've shared that information before, but now that we're releasing X20, what occurred to me was that I've never really talked about how it's actually possible to trap light in water. So at the very heart of the X20 technology is that we're trapping light inside of water so that when you drink this water, the light is released inside of the body. So this is an entirely new way of looking at light therapy. Nothing wrong with the other types of light therapy that exist out there. And of course, the patches stimulate the skin with light, and that produces some amazing effects. But now we're really entering into an entirely new era in light therapy where we can deliver light directly inside the body and produce some truly amazing effects. So I want to talk to you tonight about how that's actually possible. So there's going to be a little bit of physics here, and sometimes on these webinars and podcasts, I get a little carried away. So I'm going to try to stay as grounded as possible, and bear with me. I promise it will be worth it. Okay. So first, some of the basic things. X2O, of course, you can put tap water into this, spring water, and it will have a multi-stage filter system. It does infuse hydrogen into the water, but the main purpose is to infuse light into the water so that we can take it into the body. And this is the only system of its kind. So the general claims that we make about X2O is that it improves hydration. And you can really tell this from the first time that you drink a glass of water, and we've measured this in our studies. And this is because the water has a reduced surface tension. So it's going to be very easy for the water to penetrate the cell membrane and hydrate the cells. As a result, we can crank up energy metabolism. So not only are you getting more water into the cell, but the light that's released into the cell is turning on mitochondrial function. Because the water is structured, not in the normal sense of how we normally refer to structured water, but I'll just use that term. But anytime that you have water that is organized, it's going to have a smooth taste. So many of you may have noticed that drinking an entire glass of X2O is very, very easy. It goes down very smooth, very fast. The water also has properties of an antioxidant. Now, the water is designed to be used with any of our patches and also with Celergize. So many of you may have noticed that when you add Celergize to this water, it dissolves very quickly and very easily. And those nutrients are going to get into the body more efficiently. So the water acts as a delivery system for the nutrients that you place in it. So there's three key technologies. The light infusion is the main one that we're going to be focusing on tonight. There's two stages of filtration. The primary filter, which is going to remove heavy metals, chlorine, pesticides, the forever chemicals. And then we go through a second filter stage, which is a carbon block. And this is designed to enrich the water with hydrogen. But I would not think of this as a normal hydrogen water system. The main thing to focus on is the light infusion, because that's where most of the benefits are going to come from. Okay, so light has been around a long time. Light's been around since the beginning of creation. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So all the way back in the book of Genesis. But what is light? This seems like a pretty simple question, but interestingly, scientists have struggled to understand and define what light is for at least several hundred years. So we better understand what light is if we're going to work with it. And then secondly, how is it even possible to infuse light into water? That doesn't make any kind of sense. So we're going to, by the time we're finished with this short presentation, you're going to understand exactly how light is getting trapped in water, as unbelievable as that may seem. So we're going to go back to the 1600s. Isaac Newton, one of the greatest scientists of all time, and he was highly respected in the days that he lived. And of course, he is very well known for giving us theories around gravity, general science. And when it came to light, he believed that light was made of little particles. And because Newton was so highly regarded during his time, that most scientists went along with this. However, there were other contemporaries that did experiments that indicated that light was a wave. So very early on, as people were studying light, there were two different schools of thought. There were some experiments that seemed to indicate light is a particle, and others indicating that light is a wave. And why does this matter? We get to 1801, and many of you may have heard of the double slit experiment. It's still talked about today, and it's still even repeated today. So you take a source of light, and in modern times, we would use a device where if we only wanted to pass a single photon through a double slit, we could do that. So you have a barrier with two different slits, and on the other side, as the photons travel through, there's a pattern that forms on the other side. And the pattern consists of light colored strips and darker colored strips. And this experiment demonstrates that light is a wave. And the reason is that waves can interact with one another, and they can join and become more intense, or they can collide and they can break apart. Particles don't do that. So this experiment seemed to prove that light is a wave. Not too much further after this, a few decades after this, you had James Maxwell, again, incredibly well-known scientist, who gave us four equations that defined the relationship between electricity and magnetism. So with these equations, what they show is that you can have an electromagnetic wave that's self-propagating, and it goes through a medium. It can go through a vacuum. There's more to that, but we won't get into it. But Maxwell wanted to know if he thought, okay, if electromagnetic waves propagate, then at what speed does that happen? And he found that they propagate at the speed of light. So Maxwell correctly assumed then that light must be an electromagnetic wave. So, as they would say today, the science was settled. These experiments by Young and Maxwell proved that light was a wave. Why do we care? Because we care because then in 1905, Einstein comes along. So Einstein, of course, gave us his theory of relativity. And he did not actually win a Nobel Prize for that, by the way. He won the Nobel Prize for his work on the photoelectric effect. And the reason why this is important is that if you take a piece of metal like copper and you shine a red light on it, no matter how intense that red light is, you're not going to get any type of emission of electrons. On the other hand, if you take a blue light and you shine it on a piece of metal like copper, you're going to get electrons that are emitted. And waves would not do this. Only particles would cause this type of interaction. So through the photoelectric effect, Einstein was demonstrating that light can behave as a particle. And later on, these particles of light would be called photons. So what's going on here? I thought we just proved that light was a wave, but now we're saying light's a particle. So what is it? Is light a particle or a wave? And what does any of this have to do with X20? Okay, we're going to fast forward several decades now to the 1940s. Really well-known physicist, Richard Feynman, and he won a Nobel Prize for his work on quantum electrodynamics. And this is where it starts to get interesting. And keep in mind, light is something that we live with each and every day, and our body is literally powered by light. We can't survive without light. It's fundamental to our internal communication system. And for most of recorded history, human beings did not know what light is. Keep that in mind, as we're thinking about new technological developments. So we have this principle now in physics called quantum electrodynamics, or QED, and it treats light as a quantum object. So light can behave like a particle, or light can behave like a wave. So you would think of light as this quantum object that causes a disturbance in the electrical and magnetic fields of space. So light is not like these little balls that get thrown through space. That would not be the correct mental picture. There's something else entirely. In fact, the path that a photon takes is all determined by its amplitude and the probability that it's going to go in a specific direction. And it just so happens that when you take all the vectors, I'm deviating, sorry. If you take all the vectors that a photon can possibly travel in, the highest probability is the same direction as predicted by classical physics. But this is important because what it means is that photons have properties that are entirely different than just a wave or a particle. And we can use this information to create technology that never existed before, like X20. So it's very important to keep in mind when someone is skeptical about the patches or someone's skeptical about X20, you can remind them, well, for hundreds of years, the greatest scientific minds of their time didn't even know what light was. So what does any of this have to do with X20? Yeah, X20 is processing quantum objects. So what does that all mean? Let's take a look at this fellow, Dr. Luc Montaigne, whose office, by the way, works with X39. His office sent me email several years ago when X39 first came out. And Dr. Montaigne won a Nobel Prize in medicine for his work discovering HIV, but he quickly turned in 2009 to understanding homeopathy. Now, keep in mind, in conventional, most of you are going to know this, in conventional scientific circles, homeopathy is considered to be quackery. But Dr. Montaigne thought, no, there's something going on here, and maybe we can understand this using the principles of quantum electrodynamics. And his hypothesis is that if you, let's say, we're entering into allergy season here in Florida, and someone is allergic to tree pollen. Well, you would take the tree pollen, you would put it in water, and you would send a shock through the water. It's called succession. And then you would dump out some of the water, dilute it, repeat it until there's none of that pollen left in the water. And all you have is the signal of the pollen in the water. What Dr. Montaigne found was that there were these coherent domains that were forming in the liquid water. So there was actually an electrical signal that was getting trapped in the water. And this is what homeopathy was. So the key principles here are incredibly important and profound because it allows us to develop technology like X20 and others. So the first thing to understand is that liquid water is an open system and it's capable of interacting with electromagnetic fields. And the reason for this is that water molecules are a dipole. So in radio transmission or in receiving radio signals, we have an antenna, and the antenna is called a dipole, and that allows us to receive the electromagnetic frequency that's being transmitted. So water is a dipole, so water is capable of receiving or transmitting electromagnetic fields. Under the right conditions, the water dipoles can form coherent domains. So a way to think about this is that normally water molecules, let's say normal water, when you freeze it, you get ice. There's no structure at all. The water molecules are just sitting around randomly. But if you process water under very specific conditions, like that exists in X2O, the water will start to organize. And as the waters organize, they form, they're able to trap electrical and magnetic fields and form these coherent domains. And something incredible happens. The water molecules begin to oscillate. So many of you have asked, well, how long can the X2O water become stable? So you dispense it. How long is it good before? Uh, how long can it go before you have to drink it? And the answer to this is that it depends. If you go ahead and you heat the water up to use it to make coffee and tea, adding energy into it, adding heat into it, is going to break down the coherent domains. So I don't recommend you boil the water to make your coffee or tea. If you cool the water down, you're going to slow down the rate of decay so the coherent domains can hang around a little bit longer. If you expose the water to microwaves or radio frequencies, that will break the water down more quickly. So all depends on the conditions with which you're storing the X2O water. But the principle behind this is that you're trapping oscillations. You're causing the water molecules to vibrate when they're exposed to light in the X2O system. And this is trapping the light in the water. The other thing that happens is that we know that photons have no mass. And of course, if you took matter, the faster that it goes, there's a relationship between momentum, speed, and time. So the faster that you go, the slower time. So photons, for example, from a perspective of a human being, light takes 8 minutes to travel the 93 million miles from the sun to the earth. But from the photon's perspective, the journey is instantaneous because the photon lives outside of normal time and space. Photon doesn't actually experience time at all because it moves at the speed of light and it has no mass. And Einstein, of course, showed that we can exchange mass for energy. Well, what's interesting about this is that when you create these coherent domains, light takes on virtual mass according to quantum electrodynamics. So that means now it's a physical object that we can trap. But for this purpose, we can just think of this as the X2O system is causing the water molecules to vibrate or oscillate, and those oscillations remain sustained for a period of time, several hours after it's processed. So the beauty of this is that we can trap these oscillations in water. So now we have an entirely new type of light therapy. You put the light into the water, you drink the water, and now light is released inside of the body. And it has some amazing, beautiful effects. So what happens? We've talked about this a little bit before in some of my presentations. So I'll just do a quick summary here of what we've learned. First thing that's very impressive is that when we use tests like heart rate variability, EEG, we see that the readings change within about 15 seconds after drinking the water. So the light is released very quickly into the body once you drink it. So this is why we recommend you have a glass of this water when you first wake up in the morning on an empty stomach. 100% of the people that have been tested have a measurable change. So even if you drink the water and you say, well, not really sure if it's doing anything, we found that when we test urine, blood, bioelectrical tests, 100% of the people have had a positive change in their readings. Now, what I find the most interesting, there's many interesting things that we've learned in our tests. We've done Doppler perfusion imaging, which shows that circulation improves. So many of you may notice that you feel more mentally aware after drinking this water. That's a real improvement in circulation and blood flow. There's an electrical charge that gets released into the blood, so blood will not clump together. Metabolism improves. The body goes into a state of relaxation. Antioxidant values go up as a result because you're going closer to a balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic drive. But the urine tests were incredibly interesting because it really shows what happens when you drink X2O. There's certain amino acids that get upregulated and metabolized. So, for example, N-methylglycine and serine, which are associated with cognition, those get upregulated. And many people that drink X2O say, hey, I feel more mentally alert. It's not your imagination. Your brain is literally more alert from a synthesis of neurotransmitters. Glycine, which of course is part of glutathione, part of copper peptide, that increases that gets upregulated. Valine, one of the branched chain amino acids, that gets upregulated. Proline, which is associated with collagen production, we see an increase in proline synthesis. Alanine, which is associated, of course, with carnosine, AHK, that increases. Leucine, of course, which is the key amino acid of turning on muscle protein synthesis, that goes up. So people that are interested in improving lean muscle mass, you have a diet rich in protein, you exercise, now X2O is going to contribute to muscle protein synthesis. And then the KP pathway, this turns on NAD. And of course, NAD has become very well known the past couple of years. David Sinclair has been a big promoter of it. And NAD is associated with increases in mitochondrial energy and, of course, age reversal effects. Not only did we see this in the urine testing with people, but we also did lab work, in vitro work with fibroblasts, and we showed that the X2O water increases production of NAD. So we saw this both in vitro and in vivo. And of course, we've got a huge number of testimonials that when people drink the water, they find an improvement. There's going to be certain things I can't say. Improvement in energy, sleeping better, better mental clarity. The effect is lasting for hours, 3 to 5 hours from just one glass. Many people, it provides very powerful detox effect right after drinking it. So the claims that we have with X2O, just to reiterate, is that first, it's going to improve hydration. It has antioxidant properties because of the infused hydrogen. It works very, very quickly. Of course, it's going to be compatible with our patches. It's going to upregulate mitochondrial function, improve energy levels, and improve the flow of energy in the body. You want to use X2O with Celergize Morning. You want to use it with a greens drink, a smoothie, protein shake. You absolutely can do that. It acts, think of it as acting as a delivery system for whatever nutrients you put in it. And of course, the patches work better when people are well hydrated. So X2O is a perfect complement for all of our lines of products. So I know I got a little bit too far into the science on some of this, but the bottom line is that there is a real mechanism here for how we're trapping light in water. And this is going to be the first in a line of technologies. And it's a new era in light therapy. We're so accustomed to thinking about stimulating the body with all types of light, which has been huge benefits for people. And we should still use those products. But now we have a completely new way of putting light inside the body to extend those light therapy benefits.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Well, thank you, David, for that thorough explanation of really the history of how this technology has come to be, and just so grateful that you have discovered this right now today for humanity. So, I do have a few questions for you, if that's okay.
Sure, let's do it.
So, when someone drinks the water, how does it actually interact with the body? So, we say we drink the water and it infuses the six different wavelengths of light throughout the entire body. Does it enter the bloodstream directly? And if so, what pathways are involved in that process?
Yeah, so there's going to be some things that we know and some things where we're still speculating, but light is emitted from the body. There is some discussion in scientific circles of exactly how that's happening. Some people believe that light is a byproduct of a biochemical process, free radicals interacting with other molecules that cause light emission. But that I don't believe is the case. Light looks to be emitted right from the DNA itself, where there's highly coherent pulses of light that initiate very specific biochemical changes in the body. And that's actually what life wave patches are based on, working with that natural biological code. So, what this means is that if we think of biochemical structures in the body as being radio antennas. What that's going to mean is that they're going to resonate with specific wavelengths of light. So the body has its own innate intelligence and a communication system. So when you drink the water, the specific wavelengths of light know where to go and what to do. So, for example, we want to turn on mitochondrial function. We know we can do that with 630 nanometer light, 660, 850, a variety of bands of infrared. And it's because molecules within the mitochondria resonate with those specific wavelengths of light. So that means that when you ingest the water, the path that the light takes in the body is not arbitrary. It seeks out and it resonates just like you would with a radio transmitter to specific structures for turning on a specific process.
Okay, that makes sense. So the six wavelengths of light that are entering in this water,
Right.
they go where they need to go inside of the body. They're infused into the water and they know exactly where they need to go, organ wise, system wise, cell wise.
Right. Right. What we see, a good way to look at this is that you have molecules in the mitochondria like cytochrome C oxidase, which is a copper based enzyme. And that specifically will absorb light and increase the amount of energy going through the electron transport chain. So it will convert an electromagnetic wave over to electrons, and then these electrons can be used to increase the pool of ATP that's in the cell. So we get a bigger energy pool, and now that increases the cell's capacity to form new proteins, intracellular antioxidants, detoxification, and so forth.
Perfect. Okay, so then let me ask you this as far as the delivery. Does the method of intake, like drinking versus, say, a G tube or a PEG tube, change how the body responds or absorbs? Like, are the localized effects in the mouth, the gum, the throat, or do those pathways have any relevance to like brain or systemic signaling? And even with, like, say, a nebulizer, for example, is that even something that would be acceptable for this?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways of answering that question. The first way is we want this product to be regulated as a water machine, water processor. So we have to provide the regulatory compliant answer on this is you take the water and you drink it. And that way it's viewed as water. If people want to hold it in their mouths for 10 or 20 seconds before swallowing, they may find some interesting effects from doing that. um, we have people that are applying the water directly to the skin for various reasons and reporting good effects from that. That's not something that we've done in our studies, but it would make sense that there would be an effect. So using using the water in a fashion um, other than drinking it might give us regulatory problems if the company were to claim that. I think I might say it that way.
Perfect. Okay. So then, if someone is drinking this water consistently throughout the day, is there any concern about adaptation or diminishing effect over time?
No, we haven't seen that. But all of our studies up to this point have been short term studies. The type of longer term studies that we're going to do, we want to ask the questions. Someone's drinking this 2 or 3 times per day over the course of 6 to 9 months. What happens with the telomeres? Do they lengthen or not? What happens with gene expression? Because we're improving mitochondrial function, we would expect to see a favorable improvement in gene expression. So these are questions that we have that we want to do in a longer term study. Unfortunately, we're probably not going to be able to share those results publicly because then the water might get treated like a drug by FDA. So I think what we would do at that point is probably come out with a nutritional formula where we could make those claims, and then you would simply mix it with X2O, and then we could talk about that.
That sounds amazing. We're looking forward to that. So let's talk just a little bit about the pH alkalinity of the water. I know you've said this is not an alkalizing machine, but people are testing the water and saying, "Oh, we're seeing it's at 9.4." Or, people are
That's
saying
right.
use test strips. So what would you say to that?
Yeah. So we use a filter that makes hydrogen with magnesium. So there's going to be a small amount of magnesium that goes into the water, and this increases the pH. So we'll get an alkalinity, yeah, around 9.0, 9.4 is about right.
Okay, fantastic. All right.
Yeah.
So, from a physiological perspective, could supporting the body's natural detoxification pathways present through the skin, like such as reactions, temporary reactions? Has any of that been observed or studied that people are seeing changes like that?
Yeah, for sure. Anecdotally, we've had many people report that when they drink the water, they get a detox effect. Where this is I think where we've had the strongest reactions is people that have gone through chemotherapy. So in the initial trial, we had a number of people that said, "Well, I'm going through chemo. Could I try this water?" And we agreed to it. And what we saw was that they would detox very, very rapidly. So the caution would be if someone is interested in doing this, of course, they should do this in concert with their doctor, but they should maybe drink half a glass. And if they have too heavy of a detox from one glass or half a glass, take a day off and give your body time for the toxins to move through the lymphatic system. But I think people that would maybe smoke heavily, be on pharmaceutical drugs, they may know, and they don't exercise, they may notice that they detox pretty heavy on this. So be careful. And
Okay.
nothing harmful is going to happen. They would just get a headache, urinate frequently, nausea, these kind of things.
Okay. And so to kind of piggyback on that, is there any evidence that this technology is going to impact microplastics within the body? I know the first filter takes microplastics out, or is it its role limited to just optimizing the water quality prior to consumption?
Yeah, I did some experiments on microplastics in the body going back perhaps 10 to 15 years ago now. Actually, what I found is that if you add some food grade hydrogen peroxide into water and then you bubble ozone through it, the microplastics come out of the body very quickly.
Mm,
Um, so that's something that's incredibly inexpensive and it's available to everyone. We haven't done any tests yet to see whether or not the X2O water will remove microplastics. And again, there's some regulatory issues with that.
Absolutely, I'm sure, but thank
Yeah.
you for that answer. So, from clinical and compliance standpoint, how should practitioners responsibly address anecdotal reports where individuals associate this tech with improvements in serious conditions, but avoiding medical or curative claims?
Yeah, this is perhaps the trickiest part and the most frustrating. Personally, uh, I love getting these testimonials. I love hearing about how people's lives are changed for the better, and I personally want to see them. It's the best part of what I do, honestly, to see how people benefit from these technologies and from these products. So I would say that so that we can remain compliant, share any of those experiences privately, share them in private meetings, private calls, but don't put them online. And everything should be okay.
Okay, fantastic. So this is kind of a technical question on the machine. What is the expected lifespan of the machine? And how do you think that performance is going to hold up over time? I know you're 7 years into making this.
Yeah. Yeah. When we started with this, the goal was to have a lifespan of about 7 to 10 years. But of course, it depends on how often people use it, the conditions it's stored, the temperature, and those type of things. So, my guess would be that it's going to fall somewhere. It could last as long as 10 years or longer, depending on how long it's used. Maybe it's going to be 7 years, something in that ballpark.
Okay. Now, for our people that are abroad, of course, you have already mentioned that Europe, South Korea, Japan, we're looking at the goal is later this year. What about our Australian, New Zealand market, Canada market? What's our timeline on that? Do we have anything yet?
Yeah, we're going through regulatory now. Canada is going to be very, very straightforward. We're not anticipating any type of issues there. We're getting through the US launch, of course, and we're just ramping up manufacturing. I can tell you that when we get to the first week in June, our manufacturing supply will be very, very consistent. Uh, yeah, so once that happens, we can start looking at expanding into some of the international markets. So Canada will come pretty quickly, I imagine. Europe, we don't anticipate there being an issue. And actually, we have the infrastructure in place to distribute X20 from our office in Ireland. So that's pretty straightforward. Um, we're hoping before the end of the year, I'm going to be doing a tour through Asia in November, and I'm hoping that um, we'll be able to have the markets of Japan and South Korea open. So those are the first two that we're going to start in Asia is Japan and South Korea. So we're going through the regulatory on that.
Okay, so maybe
Yeah.
2027 for Australia, New Zealand.
Yeah, actually on Monday, we were talking about Australia. I can't speak to New Zealand, but for sure, we know Australia is going to be a great market. We don't have it on the roadmap for this year. So we're doing the regulatory for Australia, but I think it's well into next year.
Okay, thank you. All right, one last question, David. If you had to identify one measurable outcome that this technology will be known for in the next few years, what would it be?
That's tough because that's tough because there's so many things that it does, and pinpointing one single thing is tough. The area that I like to focus in on is mitochondrial function, because ultimately, if you get the cells to function like younger, healthier cells, and that's all contingent upon the amount of energy that the cell is going to produce, then the gene expression, the data set within the cell begins to reflect a younger, healthier cell. So ultimately, the wavelengths of light that we're using are those that turn on the mitochondria, but so many other beneficial things occur as a result of that. So it would be maybe difficult to pinpoint that as a single thing. Um, and I'm not sure that it will necessarily matter because I think what people will look back on are all of the benefits that the technology provided.
Hmm. I can see that. Well, David, thank you so much for taking your time this evening. I really appreciate you. We're so grateful that you have invented this technology for all of us and for humanity to be able to improve our quality of life. And your time is so, so important. We understand that. So we're so grateful you took the time out to be with our group tonight. And I know we had over 1,000 on here, and we had that many that live on our live stream on YouTube. And I'm sure many more will see the recording. So we will get this out to as many people as possible. Thank you for your time and your information.
Oh, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. Always enjoy being able to get into the community, communicate with everyone, and share some of the really fun and exciting things that we're doing. So, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Your
Okay.
information is invaluable. Thank you, David.
Thank
Have a
you.
great
Good night,
evening.
everyone.
Thank you.